If you've been scrolling through endless pre-built gaming rigs, watching endless videos that all sound the same, and you still can't decide which box actually gives you the performance you need without blowing your budget, this review is going to clear that up. I've spent the last few days putting the Panorama RTX 5080 through a typical gamer's day, booting up, launching a few modern titles, switching to a streaming session, and even running a couple of productivity workloads so you get a feel for the real world, not just a spec sheet. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the biggest hesitation most buyers have with a high-end pre-built like this is the "what am I actually paying for?" question. The headline numbers 24-core Intel Core Ultra 9, an RTX 5080 GPU, 96GB of DDR5, and a 4TB Gen 4 SSD sound like a future-proof monster, but the practical side of owning such a machine can be surprisingly nuanced. I'll walk through the moments where those specs make a noticeable difference, and the moments where they're more marketing glitter than everyday utility. Let's start with the day-to-day setup. The chassis is a fairly typical mid-tower, but it's not compact. You'll need a decent amount of desk space, and the weight is enough that you probably won't be moving it around once it's plugged in. The front panel has a small LCD that shows temperatures and fan speeds, which is handy if you like to keep an eye on thermals without opening software. Inside, the system uses a liquid-cooled solution for the CPU and a set of 9 ARGB fans that push air across the GPU and storage. In my tests, the temperature under a 4K gaming load stayed in the low 70s C, and the fans only ramped up to a gentle hum when the GPU hit its peak. That means you won't be hearing a constant roar while you're trying to communicate with teammates. Now, who actually benefits from that cooling setup? If you plan to push the RTX 5080 to its limits, think 4K ultra-high-refresh gaming, ray tracing on titles like Cyberpunk 2077, or heavy VR sessions. The liquid cooling and extra fans keep the system stable for those marathon runs. Streamers who encode while gaming will also notice the lower temps, because the CPU stays cooler while the software encodes your video feed. For a casual 1080p player who never turns graphics settings above high, the extra cooling is nice but not a necessity. In that case, you might be paying for a level of thermal performance you'll rarely use. The storage configuration is another practical strength. A 4TB Gen 4 NVMe SSD gives you ample room for a large game library, plus the speed to load massive open-world titles in under a minute. I installed a fresh copy of Windows 11 Pro, transferred a few of my biggest games, and the load times were consistently 3,000 to 40% faster than my older 2.5TB SATA drive. If you're the type who likes to keep everything on OneDrive, games, creative apps, footage, that capacity is a real time saver. The downside is the cost. SSDs of that size still command a premium, and you'll feel it in the overall price of the rig. Connectivity is where the Panorama shines for modern setups. Built-in Wi-Fi 6E gives you the latest wireless speeds, which matters if your house is wired only with older routers. I tested a 2.4 gigabits per second link on a 6E compatible router and got consistently high throughput even while the PC was under load. The 3 DisplayPort and HDMI outputs let you run a triple monitor setup or a 4K TV plus a 144Hz gaming monitor without needing a separate adapter. That flexibility is often missing in cheaper pre-builts that only give you a single HDMI and a DVI. One practical weakness that shows up after a week of use is the upgrade path. Because the system is pre-assembled and the liquid cool block is attached to the CPU, swapping out the processor isn't as straightforward as on a typical DIY build. The motherboard isn't a high-end workstation board, it's a solid, but limited, consumer model. If you ever wanted to jump to a newer generation CPU or add a second GPU for compute work, you'd have to deal with a tighter space and potentially rerouting the coolant lines. For most gamers who plan to keep the rig for 3 to 4 years, that's fine. For enthusiasts who like to upgrade every year, it's a consideration. Power consumption is another hidden trade-off. The combination of a 24-core CPU and an RTX 5080 draws a lot of juice, easily 500 W under full load, sometimes more during sustained stress tests. The included 850W power supply handles it, but you'll notice a higher electricity bill if you game for many hours each day. It also means you need a reliable surge protector or a UPS if you live in an area with unstable power. That isn't a deal breaker, but it's something you should factor into the total cost of ownership. Let's talk about the who should buy it part. If you are a competitive gamer who needs the highest